Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rob's Movie Reviews. A quick reminder, if you're watching me on YouTube, you can find my reviews over on Bitchute. And if you're watching me on Bitchute, look for me over on YouTube. Now, the movie I want to review for you this week is the 1972 horror film, which launched the career of Mr. Wes Craven. I'm referring to The Last House on the Left. This was a groundbreaking film. It went places that nobody had really gone up to that point, as far as the content of the film, the graphic gore. It really pushed the envelope a lot further than it had been pushed prior to that. Wes Craven wanted to shock people. He wanted to really elicit just a response from people beyond anything that they had ever seen before. He wanted to really gross people out, so to say. This film achieved that. He told a story that was considered at that time to be kind of taboo, about two young girls who go into the big city. They live in the rural suburbs, and they go into the big city for a fun night on the town. They run into some unsavory characters, get kidnapped, and I'm not going to give too much of it away, but things don't work out real well for them. And it's not only a gore film in that sense, but it's also kind of a revenge film for the parents of one of the girls. When they find out what's happened to their daughter, the lengths they go to seek revenge on those who harmed her. It's a film that, like I said, it really pushes the envelope and goes places it hadn't gone. Films hadn't gone up to that point, even the horror genre. It was released in 1972 by American International Pictures. It was a very, very low budget film. It was done on a reported budget of only $87,000, and that's amazing. That's just like hardly anything. There's no way a movie could be made for that kind of money nowadays. Even a D film would cost more than $87,000, but he managed to pull it off, and it was actually commercially successful, given the fact that, like I said, less than $100,000 was spent in the production of the film, and it did a box office of a little over 3 million. I think about 3.1 million. So it was commercially successful. The film was produced by Mr. Sean Cunningham, who would later go on to produce the Friday the 13th series, and that would be his mark on the industry. Wes Craven not only made his directorial debut here, but he also wrote the screenplay for the film, and he edited the film. It is a testament to Wes Craven. It was foreshadowing things that were to come from him. He was always a innovator in the horror genre. He was always pushing the envelope. Wes Craven's going to be deeply missed. He is, of course, as you know, he is deceased now. And the late, great Wes Craven did a lot of things to really propel the horror genre into the stratosphere. To really, it was around the time that the horror film genre really took off in the early 70s. It was a little sluggish then, but by the late 70s, it was booming, and it was because of this film that happened. He really helped to launch the horror industry. I absolutely love this movie. Looking at it now, in comparison to the type of films that are being made these days, it's rather tame, but it was very shocking for its time. The production quality, as you can guess, since it was done on an $87,000 budget, is actually not that great, but in my personal opinion, I think that kind of cheap look to it. Almost, it had almost like a documentary look to it, quite similar to what Tobe Hooper did with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It had almost like a documentary film look to it because the cinematography, there was no money spent on lighting, so everything was done with natural lighting, and it just gave the film a certain charm of its own. With the equipment it was made with, the film is very grainy, and again, like I said, that helps to add to the charm of it because it gives it that sense of realism. It's kind of a surreal atmosphere that you get from the film. It's not polished. It's not, a nice looking, polished, well rounded off film like you get nowadays and would get not long after this. This is a very grainy, very dark, and sometimes because of the lighting situation, but it made it seem real. You felt like it was happening in the real world in real time. And that really just added to the ambiance of the film, made it, and honestly made it that much more frightening and shocking. And if you're a horror fan, especially for a slasher, well, I wouldn't really consider this a slasher film, even though there is a fair amount of gore. It's I really wouldn't know what specific subgenre to put it in, but if you're a horror fan, you like gore, you like shocking images, you like taboo subject matter and the storyline, then this is definitely a film that you want to check out. Once again, it is Last House on the Left, released in 1972, written, directed, and edited by the late, great Mr. Wes Craven. And that's all I'm going to say about this film today. I hope you take a chance to look it up and enjoy it. It's available on DVD. I imagine it's probably on several different streaming services somewhere out there on the internet. Wouldn't think you'd have too much trouble in finding it. But if you get a chance to watch this movie, if you haven't already, let me just be clear real quick though. You watch the 1972 original. Now there was a remake done about 10 years ago, give or take. I'm not exactly sure how many years ago. The remake in its own right is a good film, and as a standalone movie, if it wasn't a remake of this film, I would really like it, and I do like it, but because it's more modern, it's more polished, and it's just the ambiance that was with the original film is not there with the remake because it just looks too clean cut in Hollywood. This film, the original, was much darker, much grainier, and just seemed more real to life. So if you're going to look it up, definitely try to look up the 1972 original. And if you want to watch them both, that's great too. But make sure you watch the original first. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this review. And until next week, you all take care.